Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So I'm very late for this one, but since 2024 is now over, I thought I'd talk about my favorite movie, without question, of 2024. And that's The Substance.
A perfect balance of 7 days each. The one and only thing not to forget. You are one.
So I'm going to go ahead and mark this entire video as mild spoilers. I'll try to avoid anything of substance that might hurt your viewing. There's going to be a lot of stuff here that I think would be cool if it's a surprise for you, but if that's not a problem, then go ahead. But if you're cool and based and smart, then you've probably already watched this movie. And if you're not any of those things, watch it right now. Do it. What are you waiting for? Warning, I am not a film student. I'm not a cinematographer. I'm not a sound guy. I'm not a professional of any kind. However, I am a guy that likes movies. One of a kind. So The Substance is this horror sci-fi comedy movie that released last year. Duh. It earned over 50 million on a 17.5 million production budget, which is probably a big profit. It was written and directed by new French director Coraline Farget. No, it's not pronounced Coralie Fargiat. I should have probably cut this part out. Now, I don't really care about awards, but when a horror movie wins one, it's a bit of an event, because horror movies don't get awards. And Demi Moore, the main actor, won an award for her acting, a Golden Globe. That's probably good. But okay, before I accidentally oversell anything, let's get into this movie. This movie deals with themes of self-image, beauty standards, sexism, aging, etc., with a bit of dash of eating disorders. If you're wondering why there's so many cuts in this video, it's because I keep messing up basic words. Anyways, sprinkled in there for good measure. So if that stuff isn't really something you want to watch, then I'd recommend not watching this. So this movie asks the characters and the audience the question, what if you had a chance to live life as your younger, more beautiful, more perfect self? And it stars Demi Moore as the main character, Elizabeth Sparkle, an aging star in the aerobics industry, who just got fired from her job, and Margaret Qualley, the younger version of Demi Moore, that spawns when Elizabeth takes the substance. Now, if it's not already obvious by the title, I love this movie. It's so good. It's already in my Letterboxd top 4, right next to Two Angry Men, the other Two Angry Men, One Angry Psycho Man. This movie is so fun. It keeps you on your toes the entire runtime, and for a movie that approaches 2.5 hours, every scene hits just as hard as the last. It never feels like it's rushing or dragging. Every scene feels like it's supposed to be there. It never has a movie left me with such a mark. By the end, it's a masterclass in symbolism, tension, dark comedy, set design, sound design,
shut the fuck up.
cinema. It's really good, okay? There's a few things I want to mention. First of all, uncomfortable close-up shots. There are so many of these, and they work so well. This normally happens with mouths and eating and a lot of stuff with eyes. But basically, these make you feel like you're getting violated. Get away from me. Why are you so... Stop. Why are you so close to me? But it works. It works super well. Santi has now said, but it works 2 times in just under 4 minutes. If I was in college, I'd make it a drinking game every time he says it, and we'd all get wasted immediately. Another thing is, I think they're using like fisheye lenses, which sort of distort the camera, make it look like one of those 2000s music videos. It makes everything look so goofy. There's also just a lot of use of shaky camera, which makes everything very violent, especially in some scenes that I'll talk about later. And these are just a few examples of some of the really cool camera work going on here. The sound design is it's self-explanatory. You see the movie, it's gross, it's wet, it's loud. Everything is just so nasty. Especially in a scene where Dennis Quaid eats shrimp, which happens to be the grossest part of this movie. Yuck. It works really well to emphasize just how gross this movie is overall. So the art direction is also really good. For example, the outfits that Sue has are super bright. They're bright pink. They're super stylish, which is contrasted by a lot of like nasty blood and some body horror as well. Okay, so I didn't really elaborate on this, but basically what I meant is how the glamorous outfits and sort of gratuitous shots of women's bodies are used as the superficial perception, contrasted with the hidden, uncomfortable reality of how these bodies are achieved, shown through the gore and the body horror and overall visceral imagery of these characters. Everything is so bright and saturated. It just feels suffocating. Okay, something that I didn't mention in the video is set design. There's some really cool, surreal sort of liminal space kind of situation going on with a really long hallway. And it reminds me a lot of The Shining, in sort of its awkward color scheme and the weird patterns on the floor. There's also some really satisfying visual contrast between the royal blue that's in the Elizabeth Sparkle's apartment and the billboard that's primarily pink, which is the new sort of look for Elizabeth's younger self. The place that Elizabeth goes to get the substance is sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's this very dingy, gray, dirty area, which is very different from the sort of royal and expensive and glamorous apartment that she's in. Again, emphasizing more of the sort of dirty underbelly of all these glamorous things that are going on in the movie. Now, the characters are also really cool here. Elizabeth is this bitter and superficial character who, you know, we relate to, but we also recognize is a very vain person. And then there's Sue, who I guess technically isn't a different character, but I'm going to consider a different character because they are very different people, even though they're in the same body, whatever. Sue is young, and she's mean, and she's sexy, and she's... Then there's Harvey, which is this exaggerated cartoon villain. It's so weirdly out of place in this movie, and yet so perfectly in place. It's amazing what he does. And they do a really good job here of portraying like these producers and these sort of big money guys who control all the entertainment as being like Disney villains, and it's so good. Now, all the actors did a fantastic job here, but some moments stood out, which is a nice transition to spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie, turn back now or forever hold your peace. My favorite moment that Demi Moore does is when Elizabeth is about to go on a date with Fred. Of course, because you're here, you've seen the movie, you know that she doesn't end up going on a date with him. So she's violently thrashing around, panicking because she just can't get the makeup right. She goes out, she sees Sue's poster and thinks that she's not good enough. She goes back in, tries to do her makeup again, and this works super well. This really got to me. You feel this scene in your soul, man. Look, I'm a guy. I'm thankful that I can go outside looking like whatever the fuck this is. But even I found it relatable. I mean, Demi probably got the award for this scene alone. Now, Margaret Qualley, although isn't mentioned as much as Demi in terms of acting, I think also deserves credit. And there's many moments to choose from, but my moment would be when she says, "Control yourself!" There's probably better scenes, but it's just, this is the one that really sticks to me. It's the one that I really remember. And now Dennis Quaid, I don't really know if this is like a main actor or maybe just a supporting actor, but it's significant enough where I want to mention him. I already mentioned before like the characterization of Dennis Quaid and how good he is as a Harvey, but my favorite scene is the infamous shrimp eating scene. Harvey says, "At 50, it just stops." Then Elizabeth says, "What stops?" And then Harvey puts the funniest fucking face. This scene is hilarious, and it had no right to be. This movie is hilarious. Now, this isn't really a spoiler, but I'm putting it here anyways, because it's something cool that I've noticed. Anytime that food is eaten, it's portrayed as like gross and sickly. You feel like, why is this character putting this in their body? And it could just be like a chicken leg, and it feels so nasty. Ugh! And it works not only to emphasize how much more gross men are allowed to be in this movie, but also how unrealistic beauty standards ruin people's, and especially women's, relationship with food. And then they begin seeing it as a virus that makes their body hideous and undesirable, which is just so cool. You know, the sound design and the symbolism, not the eating disorder. Towards the end of the movie, as Elizabeth's body grows older and deteriorates and becomes closer and closer to this monster, the final fight between both versions of Elizabeth and Sue. And out of Sue's body comes this fucking thing. I don't know what this is. It's so cool. It reminds me a lot of The Thing and these Cronenberg sort of body horrors. It's all practical. It's all there. That's actually an actor inside that suit. It's insane. And it's super visceral and super cool.
Hey guys, have a good day.
On a side note, I think some people I've seen criticize this movie for having superficial characters and just being over the top and not being deep at all. But I don't think this movie was trying to be deep at all. It's not saying anything that anyone doesn't know, but more so just reminding you of the reality of things and really scaring a message into you. I think about this movie quite a lot, and it's affected me a lot, and I'm sure it's affected a lot of other people, because it's not only funny, but it's scary and it's exhilarating. It's so many things, and it executes all of them very well. You know, I think of this movie sort of as a protest movie that doesn't really give a fuck about its subtlety, and its characters are purely just a vessel to tell the story that it wants to tell and the message that it wants to get across. It reminds me of like Rage Against the Machine, for example, when you have that section of that one song that goes, "Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me." Are people really like, well, you know, they could have been a bit more insightful. Do what? No, shut up. Shut up. The point is that it's simple and it's straightforward. And that's exactly what this movie is trying to get across. Now, not that this movie doesn't have complexity and layers and all that. It does. But it's not the point. The point is how it makes you feel about its subject matter. And it's only emphasized more by the ending. This movie goes off the wall towards the end. And nothing could have prepared me for what was coming. Just blood and more blood, and then a severed titty out of a face hole, and then a body exploding on the floor, and then the ending is the same as the start, which is, of course, just automatically makes your movie good, as you know. And by the end, you're just sort of like, I get it. Okay, I get it. Okay, look, I get it. And it just keeps going, and it keeps going, and it doesn't stop, because it doesn't care that you get it. It's going to keep hammering it into you. Now, some people might say this is annoying. Maybe. But it's also really good at being annoying. It reminds me of a lot of other movies that are sort of in the new French extremity movement. And it includes movies like Martyrs, which I've seen. And even though this movie isn't quite as traumatizing as that one, even though that one's also worth a watch, it sort of follows this same idea of using graphic sex and violence and these sort of visceral things to get its message across and to force a message into you. And it works. It works because everyone already knows beauty standards, and everyone already knows it. They don't need to be taught beauty standards. You don't need a lecture on beauty standards or to be told about plastic surgery. You don't need to be told that because you know it. You just need to be reminded of it. And this movie does it very well. So, what did I think of this movie? If it isn't already obvious enough, this is a 10 out of 10 movie. Absolutely. It is, in my opinion, basically a perfect movie. This is the kind of stuff I feel like I'm missing in movies. Movies that feel unsafe. Movies that are visceral and they don't give a fuck. And they're birthed purely out of just passion for making art and making movies and getting through to people. I haven't rewatched it yet, but I'm sure if I rewatched it, I would get even more out of it. Movie tickets are expensive. I don't want to sign up to another streaming service. But if you want to watch it, it's available on Mubi. This isn't sponsored. It's just sort of that's where you go if you want to watch it. Or you can see it in theaters. I don't think it's in theaters anymore. Maybe they're playing it somewhere. I don't know, but this movie is really good. It reinvigorated my love for movies. And I think that's very special. So, you know, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you've already seen it, that means you're cool and you're based and you're sexy and you're other adjectives. Awesome. 10 out of 10. Without question. Go watch it.